so as it says on the screen, even more than last time, I want this to be the most specific thing possible for the people here. So if I'm talking about stuff that isn't relevant, or more importantly, I think if I'm not talking about things and we're not discussing things that you want to talk about, I would so much rather hear what that discussion should be. So just let me know in the chat. Don't wait for the end of a bit. Just chip in at any point. If you've got a comment, if you've got your own experience to share, if there's some local context that I'm not getting, which influences stuff, and obviously if you've got questions, all of those things, just absolutely have at it in the chat, and we'll have as much interaction as possible. So I put the word timetable at the top of the screen, but this is extremely speculative, because as I say, I've kind of crafted each of these bits for this session. So normally when I'm doing a session, I'll have maybe 70% of a thing that I know is the appropriate thing for the session, and then I'll do around 30% of it will then be mucked about with and tailored and so to change for the institution. Whereas with this, it's sort of starting from scratch a bit. So I know that we're going to talk about these things, but the actual timings on the screen might not be in any way related to how long it takes to do each bit, but we'll see. So we're going to start off talking about the idea of moving to institutional posting from having done it in a personal capacity, and that I definitely think that's a thing. It is a thing that you have to become sort of somewhat used to and comfortable with, that change. And then we'll talk about X and Blue Sky. We didn't really talk about X in any detail last time, so we'll talk about some stuff that we can do well with X. And then we'll really get into it with Instagram. Lots of people asked in the kind of survey that went out to get more detail on Instagram posting in a specific way. So we'll kind of get into that. And again, with all of this stuff, I've put things in the slides, but what I'm really keen to do is for people to just ask about the things that you want to talk about and discuss things even with each other, ideally in the chat so that I can hear it too, about things that you want to know whether or not you should do, how to do this, what's the thing that you've seen someone else doing that you might want to do, is that a good thing to do, what's the technique there, all of that stuff. And then we'll also talk about sort of community building. We'll touch briefly on Adobe Express, but really briefly. I've got like 4 slides on that, and then we'll finish off by talking about trying to do a social media campaign on a particular topic and how that might work. The 2 things I know for sure are that we will have a couple of 10-minute breaks just so people can get away from the screen, go to the loo, get a coffee and all that kind of stuff. They will roughly happen at 11 and 12, but not necessarily exactly. It depends on sort of where we are in the thing. And normally I would say we'll definitely be finished at 1 o'clock, but we might, I certainly won't keep you after 1 o'clock, but we've started slightly early, and I don't know exactly how long each bit's going to. So there's a chance we might even finish before 1 o'clock. It just depends. I don't want to sort of artificially make things longer, but I do want to give time for the things that people want to talk about. So there's a lot of flexibility built into this to essentially shape it in the room according to what people want to talk about. So hope that all makes sense. As I say, just do not hesitate to put stuff in the chat. It's open on a different screen to the one I'm sharing, so I can always look at it. And if I don't respond instantly, I will circle back to things that you're mentioning. So let's get on with part 1 on personal versus institutional posting. And I hope this isn't too, I'm not a fan of like really, really general questions in training sessions, but I do think this is actually worth thinking about. And I hope this isn't too sort of generic, but I think it's important because it taps into what people can make the most of. I've got a couple of questions for you. And the first one is what are you looking forward to in terms of posting on behalf of the institution rather than just posting on social media in a personal capacity? Is there aspects of it that you're looking forward to? Is it particular parts of the library that you want to showcase, or particular services that you're keen to get out there, or particular types of content that you're looking forward to experimenting with, or particular types of connections with users is there an aspect of this that you're thinking, yeah, this is a bit of it that I can't wait to get started on this side of things? Is there a particular bit of it that you're looking forward to? So that is my first question for you in the chat. If you can have a think about that and let me know, because I think it can be useful to get a sense of what people have in mind as being like this is a little bit different. We're posting for the institution here, and here's a kind of a positive aspect of it. I'll tell you what I haven't done, and that's got nearly enough water for this. So if I finish this and then start to croak, I'll just run and refill my refill my glass at a time when people are typing, but we're okay for now. So as I say, I'm sorry for the genericness of the question, but I'm genuinely interested in aspects of this that people are sort of thinking, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to this side of the experience of posting on behalf of the institution. Ah, yes. Showcasing niche items. And this is great because it's really the thing about, so this is such a perfect first one to hear. So thank you, Ashley, for saying this. What is really great about social media is when the enthusiasm of the person doing the social media comes through. And that's quite hard to do because it feels like we have to be sort of corporate because we're being the library. But actually, you can do really kind of personality driven social media, particularly when you're talking about stuff that you feel passionate about, and showcasing niche items is the perfect thing. So I would say I have a colleague at York called Helena Cox, and she is our curator. She's our art curator for the art collection that the library looks after on behalf of the library. And she does social media in such a different way to me. She's completely speaking as her rather than as the library. She's super passionate about it, and it's just brilliant. I absolutely love what she does. And one of the things she does is she showcases, niche parts of our art collection in a really personal, enthusiastic way. So I think, if you're able to and you feel kind of comfortable doing so, put yourself into the post a little bit. I'm not necessarily sort of talking about saying I love this piece of art, but just sort of really just don't be afraid to enthuse about why this niche item is exciting and put your own perspective on it, and don't be afraid of it not landing with everyone, because it's worth connecting more deeply with some people than just having a sort of tepid response from the whole body of an audience. So yeah, that's a great example. Thank you for that. Okay, so huge scope to advertise the more quirky items we receive in the legal deposit. Yeah, absolutely. And just for getting a better understanding of what it means to be the legal deposit library and the kind of opportunity that opens up for everyone to have so much access, I think that's another great example. New services being launched is such a good use of social media, but also when we launch new services, we do a massive push on social media. Everybody finds out about it. Everyone gets enthusiastic. In the university sector, we have academics who stick around for a very long time. We have postgrads who are only here for 1 year. We have PhDs who are here for 3 or 4 or 5 years, undergrads who are here for 3 years. Often we lose an entire audience cycle after 3 years. So promoting and launching new things is a brilliant thing to do on social media, but we also have to re-promote and relaunch stuff that's 3 years old, because everybody who heard about it the first time has gone. Well, not everybody, but a huge percentage. So it's also worth thinking, right, we've got to, let's say, November the 25th, and we've done loads of stuff that we absolutely know we had to do, and now we've got a bit of a lull. There's nothing really pressing for this. This is a hypothetical. Nothing really pressing for this time period. What can we redraw people's attention? What can we resurface that we launched in 2022, which our entire undergraduate cohort has never seen any promotion of? So I think going back is a good thing as well. Yes, demystifying, absolutely. Putting the students at ease is huge. We talked about this a lot last time, about trying to relax people into feeling comfortable using our services. So yeah, that's fantastic. And the broadness of the collection, again, that's a great thing for social media, because it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to showcase the sheer breadth of what we have in a library, because it's all but infinite. So how do we get that across? And you can do that over time. You can spend a year doing it on a platform and really build that up. So I think that's great as well. A campaign around the promotion of an exhibition or curating, and that's happening in the year, which is fantastic. Excellent. So hopefully the last bit about campaigns will be particularly relevant for that. Highlighting the new collections, new forms of collecting, especially Bourne Digital Archives. Yeah, absolutely. So a sort of raising awareness of what something is, and then raising awareness of what the Trinity take on it is, or what you're bringing to it within this role is a really good. Okay, that's fantastic. I love all of those. And I think it's obviously you need to work within what it is that Trinity Library generally is trying to achieve. But if you can bring your own passions to I hope this doesn't sound too kind of pretentious, but if you can bring your own passions to the role, that's when it works best. That's when it connects with people. It's the sort of, we should probably do a social media post now. Let's just talk about, the library being good stuff that tends to not get that much back. And it's the stuff where someone's like, oh yeah, this is my exhibition that I'm curating and I'm going for it and I'm going to put myself into this, that's when you tend to get a bit more connection. And again, there's a risk that it all sounds a bit poncy, but connecting with people and building relationships with people is what leads to engagement with the stuff rather than just passively consuming it. And as I've probably almost certainly said in part one, I would rather have like 100 followers on a social media platform, all of whom did something different to if they didn't follow the social media platform, than 10,000 followers who don't change their behavior. Because ultimately we are there to try and get stuff done. We're trying to get people to attend an exhibition or find a new part of the collection, or use a service that they weren't going to use before. And to do that, we have to connect with them. So all fantastic examples. So the other side of this coin, you probably may well have guessed that this is the second question I want to ask. Is there anything that you're particularly worried about? And if you're sort of feeling like, it's a bit vulnerable to sort of go onto the chat and just talk about worries, that's fine. I don't want anyone to share anything they're not comfortable sharing. But if you are comfortable, is there an aspect of this you're thinking, well, as much as I'm looking forward to this, I'm slightly, I've got a sense of like, I hope this bit's okay, or I hope I don't do that, or I'm not sure what the parameters are here, or anything like that. Is there anything that you're feeling a sense of, not necessarily concerned, but just a little bit worried about a particular aspect of it? Okay, brilliant. The time and creativity it takes to promote things. Some come naturally, other parts do not. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think there's a real value in taking a step back and thinking about what types of creativity and time are worth it and suit you. So, some comes naturally, other parts do not. There is a lot of libraries at the moment on social media posting essentially sort of skits, like the things that to me fill me with horror at the amount of time they must take to film. People pretending to be ghosts, and there's like a cast of 4 librarians and a 1-minute film that must have taken a half day of loads of people's stuff time to film, and some of them go down really well, and then others don't really get much engagement at all, and you think, wow, that's such a lot of time and creativity for something that doesn't really result in a gain as such. So I think choosing where we put our creativity and what we think is worth our time is a really important part of it. Equally, you'll get libraries. There's a I don't know if you've seen on any of you on Instagram or TikTok, but there's a sort of trustful library meme going around. A library in America did it, and basically someone's falling backwards into another librarian's arms, and the librarian moves and they fall on the floor, and then the librarian says, you can't trust everyone, but you can trust your public library to do blah 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 blah. And they've got like 300,000 likes. I mean, it's hugely popular. And again, that's fantastic. But the vast majority of that engagement isn't actually relevant to the library's mission. Okay, just to be super brutal and managerial about it, like they're getting hundreds of thousands of people's eyes on it who are going, oh my God, I love this. This is hilarious. But they're not becoming users of the library because they're not in the right state. So, as in of America, not as in they're not in the right condition. So, even really successful social media posts, if they're not actually reaching the target audience with the key messages, then they're not actually helping as such. So we have to choose where we focus our time and energy. Sorry, that was a long answer. Right. So posting something that people find dull and we don't get engaged, it feels like time wasting. Yeah. So that's another great point. And I think that I as easy as this is such an easy thing to say, but I promise you that this is true. That has to be part of the process. In order to speculate, we have to risk posting something that people find dull, because we have to sort of probe and prod a little bit to find out, what does the Trinity Library audience respond best to? What do they like? What are they less interested in? What aspects of the service do they care about most? And what framings of our offer do they respond best to? And that does take a bit of trial and error. And I have to say, something that has really helped me develop my own library's social media is being prepared to fail, essentially. I'm genuinely now comfortable to the point where I will try something and I will be happy to mark it down to experience if it doesn't go well. And I will keep a note of this stuff, and I will keep learning. It's not just like, oh yeah, it's a scattergun approach, I'll just do anything. I will try something out. I'll give you some examples of this later. And sometimes it'll be hugely successful, and I'll be like, right, this is great. This fits with my audience. They want more of it. I'll do more of it. Other times it just won't work. It just doesn't get engagement for whatever reason. And that is okay, because if you don't do anything that might not work, you probably won't do anything that works really well either. So we've got to be okay with the idea of, what if people just find it dull and we don't get engagement? And so I know it feels like time wasting, and I 100% know where you're coming from. I'm not minimizing it anyway, but it's not actually time wasting if we learn from it as to what our audience likes and do more of the stuff they like and less of the stuff they don't. So I would encourage everyone to be comfortable with the idea of trying something that doesn't work very well and then being able to build off the back of it, because that's the only way to stumble upon the stuff that really works. Because there's an infinite generic advice about social media, but what we care about is, what does our very specific community like and not like, and so on. Yeah, representing the institution. So we need to be more conscious about what we say, how we say it, the positions we advocate. Absolutely, that is a slightly scary thing, to be the voice of the institution. And as you're quite rightly say, Brendan, you need that awareness of exactly what it is you're going to say, and that does involve an element of caution, and trying to think like, what is the worst possible way in which this could be interpreted, and do I need to guard against that? Because that is a reality of posting on behalf of an organization. So you have to cater for a specific purpose, but also some fun that can reach an audience that might not necessarily engage with the library. Absolutely. And I do think that the fun stuff really does build the audience for the serious stuff. If you just do the serious stuff, you simply won't reach as much people. If you just do fun stuff, you get loads of engagement, but none of it's relevant. It's the mixture that creates a really successful social media account. And again, I talked in part one about, look at libraries that do something that you aspire to, rather than just libraries that are successful on social media per se. So again, to take the example of Orkney, everybody loves Orkney. They're a fantastic social media example, but they're not an example that I can use, because they're a public library in a tiny Scottish island, and I'm working at an academic library in a city in England, and we have such different needs that if I were to make my account as successful as Orkney's account, it wouldn't necessarily be completely helpful to the library, because they cater a lot for just general fans of that content rather than the specific audiences that I'm trying to reach. So you've got to get that mixture of the stuff that is fun and the stuff that's serious, and look at accounts that are doing things in a way that is helpful for you. Okay, so what essentially I think, I'm not always a fan of sort of mechanisms for structuring thought, but sometimes I think they work, and I think essentially in this context we have to take a sort of a two hats approach to the posting, and make sure we're wearing the appropriate hat. If anyone's completely sort of switched off by this metaphor, I totally understand, but I feel like there is the two different hats that we have to wear, and it can be on the same day. It can even be in quick succession. You might be posting for the library on Instagram, and then you might go straight into your own library your own personal Instagram account, and post from that about something completely different within 10 minutes span. So we have to make sure we're wearing the correct hat. So the personal hat, the focus can be on your hobbies, it can be on your work if you want, it can be on your life, but it's all about self-expression, and just sort of, you have complete freedom really within reason to do what you want. The privacy settings can be whatever you like. So you can make your personal social media really only available to like 10 people that you know in real life really well, if that's what you want to do. There's a lot of control there, and the stakes are relatively low. They're not completely non-existent. You can still get yourself into trouble on a personal social media account, but it's relatively, comparably certainly, low stakes. So that is what that hat is like. When you put the institutional hat on, then obviously the focus is, it's not just that it's on the institution, which it is, but it's specifically about what the library wants to achieve. So you're having to come back, I think Karen mentioned this in the intro, come back to what it is that you're trying to get out of it, and what the library generally is trying to do at that given time. So that's a very focused thing compared to whatever you want on a personal thing. The visibility is always high, and as it happens, you work for an organization with huge cultural heft. So your visibility is higher than just a normal academic library in Ireland might be. So you've got a high level of visibility, and people will see the stuff, and it's on public record. It's not, if you do something you don't really like, and you can just delete it off a personal account and it'll be relatively gone. But on a high stakes, high profile account, the chances are that if you said something terribly inappropriate or whatever, it would have been screenshotted before you deleted it. So the stakes are definitely feel a bit higher. So there's sort of different aspects to the hats, right? With the risk thing, you control who sees it. You can delete your post. You can be anonymous completely. You don't have to even have your real name, but you are only representing yourself. Whereas with the institutional hat on, the edits are very difficult to do. Deletes are very heavily scrutinized. You've got the university policy, but you also have to think about things like copyright. You might post a picture of I don't know, something that you've screenshotted from a film or whatever on a personal account, because the copyright risks are essentially non-existent to doing so. On institutional account, the copyright decision is not just about risk, it's also about how does it fit in with the wider policy. You've got to think about user privacy. You've got to think about if a user posts something to me and they've got 70 followers and they're just all of their friends, and then I repost this, am I opening that user up to a wider audience than they are comfortable with, or that exposes their privacy outwards of how they would be happy for that to be? So that's a kind of complication as well. With the tone, you can be basically subjective. You can be completely emotional. You can swear. You could use slang. You can express very strong opinions, and you can say, "I think this." Whereas, of course, with the hat on of the institution, you've got to be professional, consistent, relatively. So I won't go over it again, but you may remember me saying in the last session, I don't think consistency of tone is as important as people think it would be. So if, for example, Mark and Alison don't sound the same, I don't think personally that's a dreadful thing. I think a bit of diversity in the tone is fine, but we can't just be like, one person is like, "Oh, isn't research funny, lol," while another person's completely formal. So the tone has to reflect what it is that we're trying to do as a library. We're trying to be educational, we're trying to be welcoming, and normally we're speaking as we, or the library is, rather than saying I. I know some libraries do use I, and then they kind of sign the posts and stuff, but I personally, I just, it doesn't quite sit right with me. But that's not that's not an official do or don't. That's just my personal opinion. I think it's better when libraries speak in the kind of third person. Then there's the content, and the content can be literally whatever you want. There is no limits to what you put on your personal social media account. Whereas, of course, the content on the institutional hat needs to be tied back to the mission. What we're trying to do here, what we're trying to achieve, and also the content has to have full accessibility. We need alt text on everything, and I think that should be the case on personal accounts as well, but it's not quite the same onus on it there. Representation is important. When we're using photographs of things, what are our photographs of? Who are our photographs of? So certainly any kind of stock photography, it's so overwhelmingly white and able-bodied and heteronormative, and we need to be more representative than that when we're using imagery to represent ourselves as the library as well. And then finally, there's logistics. You can post whenever you want. You can go a month without posting. You could go 2 years without posting, and it wouldn't matter when you're posting as yourself. You can just do whatever format. If you don't like X, you don't have to be on it. You can just completely ignore it, and it's not part of your life. Whereas the logistics of wearing the institutional hat, for a start, you need to coordinate with each other so that you're not both posting at exactly the same time on wildly different things, or even duplicating content. You might need to just choose whatever the delivery method is that's best for the user, rather than the ones that you like. So you might end up posting on X, even though personally you're not a fan of X, for example. Or it might be that you're really, really good at making videos, but video is not the format for this message. So you have to find a different way of expressing it. So it is worth thinking about, right? I'm logging into the library account. Let me put on my institutional hat and think about what that means. And instinctively, you'll be 90% of the way there already. No one's logging into the library and going, "Oh, this is just like posting for myself." It's, of course, you're aware of all this stuff, but just really making sure that you're fully aware of it and getting that final 10% of the differences in your mind is really helpful, especially at first. It becomes much easier, much more instinctive as time goes on. You start to get a real feel for the differences. But when you're starting to do it, it does feel a bit different, and it's worth thinking almost physically, like, I'm going to put on my institutional hat here and do things a little differently. So in summary, the institutional account needs you to shift from a sort of self-driven and low consequence communication style to one that is a bit more strategically aligned and with a higher level of accountability. Now that sounds awful. That's the problem with this, is that sounds so serious, and the pressure can sort of stop the posts being fun because you're so aware of kind of risk and sensibleness and accountability and strategic alignment and all that stuff. Whereas actually, as Lindsay said in the most recent comment, the some fun stuff is actually key. We have to find a way of being able to relax into our role as posters on behalf of the institution in order to make content that actually connects with people and yields a result, rather than just is generic and corporate and doesn't do anything. So what we're trying to do is find a way for people to feel comfortable posting as the institution. And for me, that's all about everyone feeling like they know the framework within which they are working. Everyone feeling like, yeah, I know that this, for Trinity Library and Archives, this is what we do, this is how we feel. And we're going to do some more stuff when we get into tone and content about making sure that everybody feels like they're on the same page there. There are other things that can help with this, and I'll go into them in a second. But before we get there, has anybody got any questions or comments about that kind of institutional versus personal hat stuff? Is there anything that I've said where you're thinking, actually, I'm not sure I agree with that at all, or any questions that anybody wants to raise at this point? I'll have a little judicious sip of water to give people a chance if they do want to ask or say anything. Okay, so if I'm interpreting Teams correctly, I don't think anyone is typing at the moment. So I'm going to move on to the kind of follow on to this. But obviously, with all of this stuff, if you do have a question or a comment and it looks like I'm moving on, please just type it anyway, and I will circle back around and see it. And in fact, I think we've got one coming up. There are things that help with this. And I'll pick up the comment as soon as you hit enter, Cara. I think there's a sort of strategic toolkit that helps with posting social media as an institution, as a group. So now I'm worried that I've put you off typing. Please carry on with whatever you're going to say and hit enter. I think there are certain things that really, really help with making everyone feel like they know the framework that they're working within, and they're kind of comfortable with what the aim is here. And one of them is just a social media calendar. And I don't know if you have something like this in mind already. There's no sort of official way that everybody has to do this. You can do it any way you want. The point being is to have something that allows people to see what's coming up. And then you don't end up crashing each other's things or duplicating each other's things or trying to promote something at a time when there's such big messaging going on about other subjects, that you end up essentially getting lost in the wider conversation. So you can download templates about this. There's one on the screen that's a downloadable one from Sprout Social. I don't necessarily find the downloadable ones helpful. I've never used one because they're all so business to business orientated rather than the kind of thing that we're in. And there's a lot of framing of information that I don't find helpful. I think just having a spreadsheet with a tab per month can be good, where you think, right, in November we've got these key things coming up. In December we've not got anything much yet, so what should we do there? When can we fit in the messaging around closure over Christmas and all that kind of stuff? Personally, I use a Padlet for this. I'll just show you what that looks like, actually. And am I going to show you what it looks like? Yes. This is a kind of a wider communication service planning calendar that I've made in Padlet. And you can see it's just got basic stuff about what our themes of stuff are in each week of the term. We've got sort of big things that come up. I've put in here, important dates for people. The fact that we'll be doing Christmas opening and news hours posted at the start of December, that kind of thing. It's just really helpful to have that push as to what's coming up and to remind you, but particularly because for us in the academic library sector, there are things that come up time and time again at the same time each year. So, when I finish with a month here, I just drag it to the back of the queue. I'm not going to do that now because I want it to stay where it is. But if we go along here, so you can see that my previous September here, there's a lot of this stuff that when it comes to September next year, it will still be relevant, and I can come back and kind of repurpose this. So does the library have anything along these lines? And it's if not, it would be something that I would recommend you kind of coming together and just having literally just an hour in a room, just planning out key things you absolutely know happen in each academic cycle, and then you can fill in the detail about let's talk about service X in this time period or collection Y in that time period, when you've got those kind of key things in as a sort of framework. And as I say, it doesn't this is I think this works really well for us in the kind of Padlet format, but it doesn't have to be this complicated. It can just be a spreadsheet, as I say, with kind of basic information, and that kind of stuff helps a lot. So the thing about this is, the most important thing it should do, the most important thing it should do is give you that ability to plan, because you've got a top-down view of the upcoming term or semester or year or whatever, and it'll tell you when there is a space to run something and when there isn't. So the fact that there is an exhibition coming up, for example, which there is in the new year, that's going to take some of the bandwidth of the promotion. So it's not that you can't promote anything else whilst the exhibition's being promoted, but it's worth knowing that's coming and not trying to fit too many other big things in at that same time. If you could, for example, fit in a big thing after the exhibition's finished or before or whatever. So trying to see the wider picture, the big kind of zoomed out view is good. It can also help coordinate, so you can sort of see where it doesn't feel like X is really doing anything here. It's all about Instagram. Can X help with this, or is it not really appropriate? But don't be too channel focused, because you do want to, the channels are there to serve the library's goals, rather than thinking what is good for Instagram now. It's about, what does the library need to do now, and is Instagram an appropriate way in which to get that message out, if that makes sense. So there is a library calendar, key dates for the college, and EDI and sustainability, perfect, yeah. So that is the exact kind of skeleton, the bones of the thing that you need, with all those absolutely key information on. And if you can either adapt that or take a copy of it and add to it to bring in some, this is what we'll talk about here, then I think that really, really helps, and it helps people feel like they know what they're doing and they're coordinated, and no one's feeling like, oh God, I don't know if am I stepping on someone's toes if I start to promote this on Instagram. There's a sense of I know where this will fit in with the wider whole. So that's a good idea, I think. Another question potentially for you, some sort of scheduling tool dashboard. I know that there's an absolute ban on free tools from IT, so I don't know if you pay for anything that allows you to see multiple social media accounts in one go, like people have previously used sort of Hootsuite or or Sprout Social or whatever. I don't know if there's anything like that. If you have a dashboard, they can be good, but I would absolutely caution against only using a dashboard. I think it's really important to be sort of at the coalface, as it were. Sometimes you see organizations that just use scheduling tools, and you can tell they're totally missing the vibe on a particular platform, or a thing that's happened, which would mean it's not actually appropriate to post about such and such at this time, because everybody's talking about this particular thing that is not relevant to that at all. So I would say, even if you do have a tool, I would recommend still viewing content on the platforms themselves. You can schedule stuff for sure, but sometimes it's necessary to unschedule it if things come up. Okay, so let's see. There's a calendar for in-library displays. Align with the library calendar might be better incorporated in the main one. Okay, so it sounds like potentially a useful internal conversation can take place about developing something that brings together these disparate sources of information into a place where everybody in this meeting feels like they can go and know what's happening and what's coming up and all of that stuff. So that leads neatly onto the next part of the toolkit, which is good internal communication. And this is an open question, which you may already know the answer to, or you may need to develop an answer to, but how are you going to talk to each other? Is there a mechanism through which you are already connected, in Teams or via an email thread or some sort of forum where the people who do social media can talk to each other? And we at my institution, although it's basically just me doing it now, but in the times when there's been other people doing it, we use Slack at my institution because we're not a Microsoft institution, so we haven't got Teams. But the point, it doesn't matter what the platform is, what we have a place, and what we do in that is we discuss ideas for content, we bounce ideas off each other. Okay, so social media network for all the ambassadors is the perfect thing. So what I would just so encourage you to use whatever it is when it happens. Like if you're thinking, so for example, I'm just going to pick on Lindsay because she's the previous person in the chat. If Lindsay's thinking, I've got an idea for a thing, but I'm not, is this too much, or is this, do people get what this is? Just ask everybody else. Like, it's so helpful to have a sounding board to say, and then someone else can say, no, I don't think that's too much at all. That's great. That will really capture people's imagination. Or someone else might say, I'm not sure without the context that we have, people will actually get why that's significant, or why, so again, Karen was talking about the hook. What's the hook? Someone might say, this is all great. This is all great stuff. Can you frame it in a way that's got more of a hook so it makes more impact? Or someone might say, I've had this question via direct message on Instagram, and I just don't know the answer. I don't know what is the policy on such and such. Does anybody know? We do this stuff all the time. And I've got people in that channel who aren't even actively on social media. They're just able to provide information for me when I have to talk to someone about a library related thing. So I would say good internal communication is absolutely essential, and just don't be afraid to constantly ask stuff, check in with things. And as Karen says, you can always pass it upwards to the wider comms team as well if you've got a really big sort of issue that you want to talk through. But just small things, just get on there and chat about it. So also reporting into library operational comms group, representatives of the group with a monthly basis. Yeah, okay. So all of that sounds like it's in chain. Then you've got the analytics, and everyone can have analytics. The key thing is to check and learn and do things differently off the back of them. So if you'll forgive the management speaky phrase, what you want is actionable insight, not just like, oh, that was really interesting. That's fascinating. Isn't it great that was popular? It's about saying our audience really liked it when we did this, so how can we do that again in a different way? Or our audience, despite the fact that other library audiences apparently love this kind of thing, ours don't for whatever reason, so how do we find a different way of expressing this service or this collection or this event or whatever it is? So having some sort of regular looking at analytics and learning from it and noting down the things that are progressing really well and things that are less good is really worth doing. If you can do it sort of, have some sort of report that you discuss every 3 or 6 or 12 months where you kind of bring stuff together, that can be good. The trouble with doing it every 3 months is it feels like it's a lot of work. There's a lot of, oh, here we go again, I'm doing another report. But if you leave it 12 months, it's a really big task to assemble all the stats. So I don't know, some kind of method of coming back to this stuff and talking about it is good. And then there is documentation. Now we've heard that the policy stuff is 15 years old and it's common sense stuff. So that's fine. That gives you that information. There's kind of guidelines that are being updated and that everything's going to be forwarded on after this. I would say, consume all that, what tends to happen, and I've not seen the kind of latest iteration of what the guidelines might be, but what tends to be is that policies are very much focused on what you can and can't do, and that's really important. I think it's also really helpful to have a sense of what you should do, and what kind of things work well and what kind of things don't. So I would recommend coming up with something that is essentially links to all the official Trinity documentation, but then has some additional stuff just for you 12 people, or how many people is in the ambassadors group, that just talks about the way in which you might frame stuff, examples of what works and what doesn't, and all that kind of thing. So I'll just to give you an idea of what I mean here, I'll just bring onto the screen what I have written. Now, as it happens, I do the Instagram on my own at the moment. So this is, for now, it hasn't been updated recently because the people who I worked with have all left. So I don't need this at the moment, but I do write this guidance. And when I have other people working with me, this is the first thing they do, is they get this. So there's basic information about the grid, what we do on the grid. There's an inspiration of Liverpool Uni Library, who are really good at social media and particularly good at Instagram. So I'm always encouraging people to go and look at other successful accounts. There is some basic kind of key principles here about, alt text and filters and tagging people, and this thing that I would have said to you last time, which is that the subject of the picture being visually arresting is much more important than anything else. A note on Instagram stories, examples of what we do with stories. So time sensitive things, promoting collections, events behind the scenes, links to relative useful images or other things that are kind of helpful for people. A note on Linktree, which is what we use to have notes in our links in our bio. And then this is the key thing that I would really recommend doing: popular types of posts. So just trying to categorize things that have worked well in the past, and they've got good responses, and try and say, right, so this, we know our audience likes this, so let's do more of this in the future. This really needs updating because I've not had to update this for a while. There's some things that have superseded the information that is in here. Anyway, so that's what I've got for my library. And I would recommend coming together to build something that is very specific to you lot, that notes as you go along the things that are successful. And as you start to develop a more collective sort of sense of how you want to do things and what works, just make a note of it, especially because you all know what you're doing with this. You've all been brought into this group. You're all going to be part of this network. You've all had these 2 bits of training, but at some point someone else will join the group who's not been here for any of this stuff, and they'll need to get up to speed with what it is you're doing collectively. So think about writing for yourselves, and also think about writing for the future people that might come and join in. So just to finish this bit, we talked in part 1 about the idea that you're trying to find a sweet spot between the audience's interests, your knowledge, and the official kind of guidelines. So the what you know about part of the Venn diagram, that is all you really need when you're wearing your personal hat. Like, that's, you could just, I know some people do more than this, but you can just post about stuff you know about, even stuff you don't know about but you just like. You can just do that, and that is a really straightforward diagram. When you've got your professional hat on, then you still need stuff that you know about. You don't want to be posting about stuff where you've got no true understanding of it. You also need to think about the stuff that your community cares about. Now, to a certain extent, you need to do that as an individual, but you don't actually have to. Like, I know, for example, that when I post about drumming stuff on my social media for my Blue Sky account, no one really cares, because no one follows me on there for drumming. They are there because I talk about library related stuff. So I could post about it anyway, and occasionally I do, but most of the time, I'm sort of thinking, right, my community doesn't really care about this, so I probably won't. But I've still got the option to do whatever I want. Whereas with the institutional hat on, it's probably not. There's very few scenarios I can envisage where posting about something the community just doesn't care about is going to be worth the time. Now, sometimes we do actually have to do that. If it's about people's behavior in the library or something like that, no one in the community is like, oh, good, there's a behavior in the library post, but it's still important enough to post about. But most of the time, we have to be in both of those circles. And then, of course, there is the policy bit of it, and that's absolutely essential at all times. We need to know that we're working within the policy and pitching our content in the middle of that. And as I say, that looks complicated, but it does become second nature very quickly once you get into it. So all of this stuff, I think, helps with the shift from the personal hat to the institutional hat when we're posting on social media. So before we move on to part 2 and start being a bit more kind of specific about platforms, is there any questions, comments, suggestions, things you'd like to share with each other about personal versus institutional posting, generally speaking? Anything that anyone would like to ask or say? And I'm still feeling bad because I think Cara was about to say something and didn't because I moved on too quickly. So I'm going to pause here. And on the subject of people posting, if I do get your names, if I pronounce your names wrong, please correct me, because I do not want to be the embarrassing English person that can't do name pronunciation. So please tell me if I get it wrong. So any questions or comments about any of this stuff? Okay. Don't think there are any, but if there are, please do. Even if you think of it in 3 minutes time, just write it anyway, and we will circle back to it. Okay, so let's talk about the different platforms that we have, and specifically let's talk about X versus Blue Sky, and where X and Blue Sky and Instagram, the three key things, fit into this sort of wider landscape of what we're doing. So here is a graph of social media users, total active users in millions in 2025. And so we've got X there, we've got Instagram there, and then there's Blue Sky, which has got far fewer users than any of these stuff with 40 million. But as it happens, so many of them are academics and researchers that it's nevertheless worth our time. So Pinterest is something that I don't think the library actively uses, as far as I can find. Trinity College Dublin does have a Pinterest account, but it's not been updated in nearly a decade. So I think basically it's something that we just don't need to worry about in our context. We can use Instagram for stuff that Pinterest does well, so it's not something to care about too much. Weibo is a Chinese social network, looks kind of halfway between Facebook and Twitter when you look at it. There is a Trinity College account with 19,000 followers. Sorry, Trinity University Dublin Ireland account, not college. And the thing that I would say about this is we certainly don't need a library Weibo account, but what I do at my library is I get the absolute key messages for induction on orientation translated and put on the university's Weibo account in early September, when students who are coming here from China are still in China. So that's just something to think about, that if you're coming up with some really key stuff, you could maybe get it out on the uni account. And then there's X, and X has got the asterisk by it because it says 586 million because that's what they say, but they are literally entirely populated by liars and charlatans. So it's impossible to say how many people actually use the platform, and also how many of them are bots versus actual human beings. So we'll come back to X. Snapchat, it's just simply do not worry about Snapchat. It's not something that we need to think about as an academic library. There are lots of young people on there, but it's fine. We don't need to do this one. And then there is TikTok, which we're not going to talk about today. No problem. We'll see you when you return. It's worth thinking about long term, because there is a huge amount of influx of students who are simply not looking for stuff through words. They are not Googling anything. They only find information by scroll searching through video. And obviously we're going to try and meet that demand with Instagram. But certainly what I find is when I look at how people find our videos on TikTok for the library, loads of them are by searching library, York Library, UOI Library. And so I know that they are searching for the library, and if I didn't put anything on there, they would be greeted by just whatever was there, not stuff from us. So it's thinking about it long term, it's potentially worth it, even though it's a pretty time consuming platform. Then there is Instagram. We'll return to this in detail. I just want to flag Instagram versus YouTube. Looking at that, it feels like YouTube is much more significant as a platform because it's got 500 million more users. And in fact, it's the second most popular website on the internet after Google. It's even more popular than Facebook, but that doesn't account for the fact that loads of people use Facebook on the app. So YouTube is huge. However, it's actually often not that fruitful compared to Instagram and TikTok. So if we look at the library YouTube channel, these are all really well done videos, and the viewing numbers are relatively low. If we look at the Instagram Reels, not to say in any way that these aren't well done videos, but just that they are a different type of video. They're often less production heavy, and they're shorter in a lot of cases, but the views are exponentially higher because Reels work really, really well for reach. So essentially, the way that YouTube, traditional normal YouTube, not YouTube Shorts, works is if people find it, they'll see it, and if they don't, they won't. Whereas what Reels and TikTok do is they try and show people stuff that they don't know exists all the time. So if you're going to make a video, it needs loads of active promotion to work as a YouTube video, whereas not necessarily so much on Instagram. It'll just get out there. So it's worth bearing that in mind. Final thing to say is that there is still a Facebook account for the library. If it was me, and this is not what we're talking about today at all, but if it was me, I would make that entirely public facing. Like you do have the public as part of your audience. So I would just have Facebook for them and not worry about any kind of student or academic content there. So basically your social media it becomes easier for you to do because you know what you're doing, and more impactful for the audience if you know what each platform is for. Like, what's it for and who is it aimed at is the key thing. What are they interested in? And if you can avoid treating it as your audience as a big homogenous whole, or your social media is a big homogenous whole, then it tends to be a little bit more successful. So I would say that generally speaking, Instagram is sort of visual storytelling and inspiration. Blue Sky is kind of professional academic dialogue, and X is more functional updates and news. But who is that for? And thinking about who it's for and how they might differ in terms of what they care about or want is really, really key to making the social media content work. So in my view, Blue Sky is about Trinity academics and researchers. It's about that wider research landscape, higher education in general. And if you're interested in, communicating with other HE libraries as well, sometimes that can be important for libraries, sometimes not, then that's a good place to do it. X, to some extent, Trinity academics are still there and researchers there. But also the students, some students are still there, and the public, some of the public are still there. So there's a mixture there. So as I said, Reels appear on Facebook and vice versa. Does this mean you need to tweak videos with that in mind? That's a great question. So you can cross post all kinds of stuff, including stories and Reels on Facebook and Instagram. And you can also, sometimes they just show stuff on Facebook that you've posted on Instagram, unless you say, I don't want that to happen, in which case you can stop it. But even if you're not cross posting, it might surface it on Facebook anyway. I think you don't need to tweak videos with that in mind is my answer. I think it's a really good question. And I generally speaking, I think changing stuff for the different platforms is good, and is sometimes worth the time it takes. However, the audience is so much more relevant on Instagram than it is on Facebook, and Reels works so much more importantly. I mean, Facebook video is very important on Facebook as well, but it's absolutely crucial on Instagram. So that in that hierarchy, I would say it's worth just getting it right for Instagram. And if it happens to go well on Facebook too, that's a bonus. But don't worry about that, because the audience isn't the right audience for a lot of the stuff, and it's just not as valuable as a marketing platform for the library as Instagram. So I would say just make the videos work for Instagram, and let the Facebook thing be the cherry on the cake rather than the cake itself would be my view. Then you've got Instagram, which is primarily students. There are postgrads on there as well. It's not just an undergraduate platform. There was a time when it was, but loads of those undergraduates aged up and became postgraduates, and there's more and more PGRs on there as well. So you can do postgrad focused stuff on Instagram as well, but I would say the main audience is undergrads. So think about the messages you've got to put out there and who are they for. So if you're talking about open access publishing, for example, Blue Sky would be great for that. There's loads of people there who are interested in that, and you might want to put some stuff on X about that. But probably Instagram is not going to be very fruitful to discuss that topic. You might get some value out of it, but it's going to be hard to get engagement, and you do need engagement to get reach. So you have to think about, what do people respond to here on Instagram, or else no one will see it. Then you've got stuff about study spaces. Well, there still are a few students left on X, so that might be good. But we know that Instagram is a great place for stuff about study space, working in the library. Blue Sky, not so much, because there's no undergraduates there. So your kind of key audience for this information isn't there. If it's about like a change to the catalog, so yeah, there's a new system coming in, that will be appropriate for all of them, because every single person in the audience is kind of keenly aware of their need to use the catalog. So that would go across all three, but a lot of content wouldn't go across all three. So we're going to do a brief exercise about this, but I think it would be an appropriate time to have a little break, because we started early, and it's been a while since anyone had a chance to stop. Okay, so we're actually going to go into a brief activity. So anyone who isn't yet back, they can just pick up this as they arrive. So we were just talking about the three big channels that are the focus for now. And how they have slightly different audiences, and different types of information would be appropriate for different channels. So what I would like you to do, very straightforward activity, you can either grab a piece of paper or just open a Word document or whatever. I just want you to come up with 4 promotional messages. Either they could be general library things, or they can be about your specific area within the library and archives, if that's easier. Don't worry about the wording of the messages. This isn't about coming out with a brilliant sort of tagline or hook or great copy. It's just about thinking 4 specific areas that need promotion, and then for each of those, once you've got the 4, write an X, a Blue Sky, or an Instagram according to whether or not you think that platform would be appropriate for the message or not. So there will be some where it's all 3 potentially. There'll be some where it's only one of them. Maybe a couple will have more than one. I hope that makes sense as a thing. So I'm just going to go back to being quiet for a few minutes, just to give you a chance to grab a piece of paper, open a document, write out these 4 distinct things or messages, and then work out which of these platforms would be appropriate for them. Hope that makes sense. Let me know in the chat if you've got any questions. So still a little bit of time left on this. If you just come back, we're just having a brief thing to try and separate out what kind of messages would be appropriate for what kind of channels. We're not trying to come up with a perfect piece of marketing here. It's just about trying to assign a channel to the message, or more than one channel in some cases. If you've breezed through this and you've already got your 4 messages, and you've already assigned your channels that you think would be appropriate, if you're happy sharing an example in the chat, that'd be great. It'd be always good for other people to see it. But also, there's a sort of bonus bonus part of this activity, optional part, which is to also add in non-social media channels that you think might work for these messages as well. Because we're talking about social media in isolation today, mainly because it's a social media session for social media ambassadors, but the best marketing makes use of social media with non-social media channels as well. So if you can think of other ways in which these messages could come out as well, and again, that might not be the same ones for each of the messages, it depends on what the audience is and what the time of the message is, and that's a kind of helpful extension to this. So I'll give you another minute or so, and you can see there's a couple of questions or comments coming, so do let me hear them in the chat. Okay, so I can see got some typing happening, so I will pick up the question or the comment or whatever comes in a second. And it's just to say, like, as you come up with themes, areas to promote, it's always worth separating them out into channels rather than autopiloting to all of the different channels, because there will be times when the audience, we talked at the start, or Karen mentioned at the start, you don't have to have every single post on every platform, hitting everyone in the audience. It's perfectly okay for me as a follower of your Instagram to say that post's not for me, this one is, that's fine. But if you're consistently posting about types of things which aren't of interest to the demographic on the platform, then you start to lose your kind of currency as communicators, and then you get less you get less interest. So yeah, announced 24-hour reading room is closed. All channels. I would agree. Yeah, I think that's a perfect example of a kind of an important thing, which everybody in common needs to know. Library is quite a big donation, so yeah, vlogs absolutely would be the right place for that. Blue Sky, especially if there's kind of academic interest in that. And then if you can find an angle that's going to interest the students in Instagram, yeah, totally agree. Yeah, Insta with tags for the visit. Collaborating with the main Instagram to make reels promoting to new exhibition. Yeah, absolutely. If you can get the main Trinity College Dublin account to collab with you on an exhibition thing, that is just such the boost in reach will be so huge. And collaborations are such a useful thing on Instagram. So yeah, great examples. Thank you for those, Anna. Yeah, so yes, the legal deposit, uncatalogued items. Yeah, trying to find a way to get people to know about all the stuff that aren't yet available. And I think Blue Sky potentially could be good for that as well, for the academics and researchers that are, working in a particular niche area and they need to find everything that they can on a particular bit. You might be able to supply them with something they don't even know that they can get. Promoting the upcoming exhibition, yeah, absolutely, all three. Press releases, promotion digitized collections on Instagram, images and links to the research community for Blue Sky. Yeah, I would agree with all of that. Environmental awareness on campus, Insta and X, AI use and plagiarism. Yeah, I think it's worth putting them on all three. I think that'll probably get like more interest on Blue Sky than on X, and it will get more reach on Instagram than on either of the other two, even if people aren't necessarily that interested in it. Yeah, the events, great for Instagram. I love a bit of Halloween stuff on Insta. Illegal deposit is back. Yeah, all three of them. Study room's definitely an Instagram thing. Catalog has changed, all three of them. Yeah, anti-plagiarism, X and Blue Sky. I can get behind all of that stuff. Yeah, excellent examples, Claire. Nice. Yeah, that's great. Yes, asking readers for submissions about interesting things they come across in our collections and Insta stories is a really nice thing. Like if you can get that happening as a sort of regular thing, and then people start to expect it and they start to see themselves reflected back from the account, like stuff that tell us what you think is significant about what we have. I think that would be a great thing. Yeah, so open access, new policy on Blue Sky for sure. Extended opening hours on X. New sofas first place somewhere in the library Instagram. Yeah, I would say that was spot on as well. Okay, so great stuff. And as I say, it becomes sort of more second nature the more you go on with a lot of this stuff, and thinking about who gets what is part of that. So let's talk about Twitter. We didn't spend time on Twitter last time. I basically sort of slagged it off a bit, and then we moved on. But for now, we know that the sunsetting of X is in the future, so it's not something that we're going to be investing in forever. But for now, it is a platform, and it will run alongside Blue Sky for a bit, and then it will be killed off. So there'll be a decent period of time where this is still happening. So how do we use it? We talked in the first one about formality level, and I think it goes for this platform as well to be as friendly as we can. We still want to spell things right and punctuate things, but basically we want to speak in as human a way as we possibly can on Twitter. I think there is an aspect to Twitter which is that it is full of bad actors. It's full of people with bad intentions. So you can post around much more controversial subjects on Blue Sky than you can on X, because generally speaking, people on Blue Sky are there to talk about stuff in a more measured way, and people on X are big into kind of rage bait. So whilst we want to be friendly, we do also want to pick our topics according to the level of flack that we want to have to deal with. So an unscientific study of popular posts from libraries on X, and what is it that made them popular? Sometimes it's just about taking opportunities for levity. For a while, this post was the most popular post we'd ever posted on our Twitter. My colleague wrote this. It's just a lost bra post with some levity involved, and people just went off on it. The person came and claimed it, and she tweeted about it, and that was a big thing as well. And it was just like it just became a big thing. So sometimes just fun stuff happens, and you can make the most of it. Orkney, who I've already mentioned, they would do that if it happened, but they also just make stuff. They actually make this is a tortuously long thread of a joke, which is son of a preacher man based pun. So sometimes they just I don't think this should really come under the opportunity of taking opportunities for levity. This is making levity from nothing, really. This is a classic example of a cultural institution making itself more approachable. So it's a famous tweet. Another beautiful day. Spend it all of it indoors in our libraries in the dark. Went down really, really well, and sort of helped break down barriers for people who sort of maybe thought that the Bodleian was a very serious institution, and there's a concerted effort to make it less serious, which was very successful. Not less serious as an institution, but more approachable, I would say. SAS. I think this is the most popular library tweet of all time. I don't know that for sure because I've obviously not done an exhaustive analysis, but I don't know of anything more popular than this. It is brilliant as a tweet because it's so deadpan. It's so spare. There's no talking seriously about not putting stuff in books. It's just brilliant. And it works really, really well. And this is going back a long way now. This is 11 years ago, this one. Please don't shelve sandwiches. If you need help differentiating between books and food, ask a member of staff. #experts. Bit of sass there. Went down really well. Sometimes whimsical stuff succeeds on there. So we had a big thing where robins were coming in during the pandemic and finding warmth in the library because we had to have all the windows open because of the pandemic, even though it was freezing cold. And loads of students were just basically working with robins just sat on their desks. So we turned that into a big thing, and that was really successful. This is from Public Library, but it's just, I think, 4 books in the order that they were returned, but it reads like a sort of Nordic poem from the 11th century or something, which is brilliant. And this was another pandemic-related one. Cardiff. Yeah, I would never normally approve of a shush-related trope in librarianship, but you can't argue with the success of this one. If anyone would like a personalised shush, please reply here. They got so many replies, and it was just a really sort of successful thing that made people feel a sense of connection at a time when everybody felt very isolated because of lockdown. Now, these are all examples of either viral or semi-viral tweets, and I have to say, virality should never really be the aim. What we want to do is engage our community, and sometimes the framing really, really helps with that. So whether it is sincerity or sass or whimsy or whatever, putting something on it, putting that take on it, the hook, as Karen said, is the thing that makes it more likely to be talked about. And really, we just want our peers to talk to each other. If other people also join in, then that's fine, but they're not our key audience, right? Our key audience are Trinity-related people and members of the public who are interested in Trinity. So when we do stuff in an interesting way, it makes it more likely to be passed on, and that's what we're aspiring to. It's good to use images. 80% of X happens on a mobile device, and the reason I'm quoting that slightly dull statistic at you is because often we will make or do social media on desktops or laptops as people doing library social media, and that makes it very easy to forget that the vast majority is not being consumed in that way. So images can help, arrest the scroll. And you can tag people in an image. So whereas if you were to just write a tweet and you wanted the psychology department and the politics department to know about the tweet, you'd have to write them into the tweet. You'd have to have their @usernames as part of the tweet. And the problem with that is, if you're in the Department of Education, you might think, oh, this is just for psychology and politics. There's nothing here for me. Whereas actually, it could be something for you. It's just primarily for those two audiences. So when you put an image in, and you go to the tag people thing, you can tag a bunch of accounts to make them, at the absolute minimum, 100% guaranteed they'll become aware of your tweet because it'll show up in their mentions timeline. And obviously, the hope is that if you're, for example, tagging in the main account for the university, maybe they'll repost it and you'll get a lot more eyes on it. Or maybe if you're aiming a resource at the film students, maybe the film students will get to hear about it because they'll all be following the film department and they'll repost it. So tagging people in an image is good, and of course alt text is essential. in images as well. You don't have to be limited to images. You can post video. Video is not nearly as important to Twitter, X, as it is to Instagram or obviously TikTok, but you can post video. You can post the same things that you post to YouTube can also go on X. That's a good multiple use of the same thing. I wouldn't put everything from Instagram on there, but it can support vertical video, and because most people see it on a mobile, it sort of works well on that. There is an official limit of 2 minutes and 20 seconds of time, although I did read a thing earlier in the year that suggested that you can actually, if your file size isn't too big, do much longer videos on the platform without getting stopped. I mean, you can definitely do that if you pay, but assuming you're not paying, then there might be some leeway to put longer videos in there as well. And I think it's always good to not just make statements, but ask questions. And there is a sort of 1 in 4 rule about content, which is that 1 in 4 social media outputs should be directly about the organization. Now, I don't stick rigidly to this at all. I just think it's a helpful device for thinking about how much we should be trying to mix up our content. So there is a, the one might be the library is open late tonight. That's a basic kind of post on X. But then the other 3, you might have a reply, you might have a retweet of something else, or you might just have a link to something that is not necessarily specifically related to the library, but is useful. And I think that's a key part of using these platforms well, is providing stuff that is useful to people, whether or not it's directly pertaining to the library or not. You can also have battles. I can't imagine that you could really find an opponent that you wouldn't be punching down to because of your kind of status. But sometimes organizations have friendly wars on Twitter. This one was so successful, it became a newspaper article. Thousands of people ended up reading the tweets from the Natural History Museum and the Science Museum about who was better. And of course, you can tweet in threads. And there is a number of different ways of doing this. You can have one big thread that just tells a story in one go, or you can keep coming back to something. So on the right, there's an example from the Glasgow Women's Library where, although all of those were from November the 19th, they actually added to the thread once a day for the whole of a 30-day period. So they got more and more recommendations, more and more things were added. And then what that means is if I happen across something on the 1st of December, I can, because they're all joined up, I can go back and read the rest of the prior stuff in one go. So it's a way of bringing things together. You can basically reply to your own tweet. So if you do a basic tweet saying, the catalog is down or whatever, then it's good to reply to that tweet later if it's back up, so people don't ever see one without the other. And so you can just add, you can either write stuff all in one go in writing with the plus sign at the bottom there, or you can just find a tweet and reply to your own tweet just like you would reply to someone else's tweet, and again then they are joined together. So I'm not going to linger on this, but if you can think of good subjects for threads, then do share your ideas either in the chat or with each other. Behind the scenes stuff, a day in the life, a story about something that happened on this day in Dublin, or just it could be a thread about the exhibition, and or my 5 favorite exhibits in the exhibition from the curator, or whatever it might be. If you think of ideas for threads, do note them down because it's really easy to have ideas in passing that simply never get returned to. So again, if you've got this kind of shared content calendar, it might be worth having a sort of an aspect to a tab of it or whatever that's also a ideas we should do when we get the chance, because you start to build up a kind of collective thing which sparks the collective imagination of here's some stuff that we could do. I don't have the thread now. I haven't worked it out now. I've got another meeting, but I know I would like to do this in the future. So so again, what we're trying to do is avoid blending in, because there's just a lot of content and it's easy to become part of the wallpaper. So honesty helps, a bit more personality helps. Humor is good, although jokes are very hard to pull off. And just sort of subverting expectations for how the library works is a good way of not blending in. So here's an example from the Bodleian. I really, really like this. So this is Innova Solutions saying, could the Bodleian Library become bookless in the future? Now, obviously, the thing that most libraries would do in this situation is say, well, of course, we are always looking forward, and digital is a huge part of what we're investing in as a library. But fundamentally, the printed book is such a key core part of our offer going back hundreds of years. We will probably still continue to provide something like that. But what the Bodleian did is they just went with no. It's so good. It's crushing for Innova Solutions, but it's brilliant as a tweet for the library. And it's got all of that stuff. It's honest, it's got personality, it's humor without being a joke, and it fundamentally subverts expectations of how a library would do stuff. Now that one-word tweet was written by Adam Kasari, who later wrote this 5-word tweet, which was even more successful and is one of the most popular tweets ever. Certainly in the cultural sector, I think it's the most popular tweet that's ever happened. Interestingly, he's written about the process of trying to write for the august institution of the Bodleian. And it does remind me a little bit of trying to do social media for Trinity College Dublin. That sort of, grand institution that so many people are interested in beyond just the users of it, in a way that, for example, I don't really have that issue. In my context at the University of York, I'm mainly speaking to people who are at or of the University of York, whereas you've got huge kind of public interest in you. So Adam wrote this tweet, and you could even buy merch. He once was out, just out in public, and he saw someone wearing a t-shirt with his tweet on it. Can you imagine what that would do to you? But he had a very weird context where he ended up being recruited for Tesla off the back of his tweet, doing social media for Tesla, which he then got out of, and he's now a freelancer. He did stuff for the Royal Academy, but he wrote this thing about lowering the tone. And basically what he said was, while many enjoy simply accessing historic material, we found that many also wanted to be entertained. And it's an interesting article that's worth having a look at, because it talks about the difficulty of taking a very sort of serious institution and making it accessible through something that's quite silly at times in order to get a wider audience. Which goes back to the 3 tips from Ella Hassett that I shared in the first one, which was to be timely, informative, and fun, because being fun is a strategic marketing goal that we should aspire to. Hashtags, don't use hashtags for the sake of it. Hashtags serve a role, they have a function. And so they're very good for joining in an existing conversation. So there is, for example, hashtag Trinity Research is a Twitter hashtag, X hashtag at the moment. So if you've got something that feeds into that, when you use the hashtag, then that umbrella brings an audience to your tweet which wouldn't find it if they weren't following you, but might well be interested in it. So that's great. You can also use it to pull lots of information into one place. So you could have a hashtag that you create, and that's just writing a hashtag in. You don't have to sort of formally create it. You just need to find something that no one's used. And then you could bring that as a sort of a way of finding all the information about one aspect of the Trinity Library offer. So in my institution, we have UOY tips, University of York tips, and the idea being that you can search that across any platform and you can probably find some stuff. So we used UOY tips as a way that if someone found a tweet with a tip in it and they just wanted to see tips, they didn't want general updates, they didn't want news, they didn't want nice pictures, they just wanted advice, they could click that hashtag and they would just find stuff from us along the same theme. And that was a helpful way of curating. So it's not just about having hashtag special collections or whatever, hashtag books, or just put hashtagging words in a tweet. It's about having it with a reason, with a purpose, with a function. So yeah, Lindsay said, can you go back to the slide with Ella on it, please? So yeah, this is and just for anyone who's forgotten the context, because as I mentioned this in part 1, she just won an award for her library's marketing, and she was talking about what it was that she'd done, and she'd said people were maybe a little bit afraid of the library in past years, so we tried to make ourselves more approachable, and that was what had worked. Right. Fantastic. That is not a connection that I knew of when I put this slide in. So that's excellent. Yeah, brilliant. So analytics used to be something that everyone had. It was really good. Twitter analytics was great. However, it's now a premium only option, but you can view analytics on individual tweets. So it's a much more complicated, faffy process. It doesn't go back that far, but you can make the most of it. So you can go into a tweet and you can see the impressions. So that's the amount of screens it's appeared on. It's not the total number of people who've seen it, because they may have seen it more than once, but it's been on 3,202 screens. Engagements is people doing something. So what, have they pressed the like button? Have they expanded it? Whatever. Detail expand is when, someone has clicked into a thing and looked at the picture or clicked into a repost or whatever. And then people who have visited your profile as a result, or people who've clicked on the link. So all of this is useful. And if a bunch of people see something with a link in it and no one clicks the link, then that is worth knowing, because normally when we put links into stuff, it's because we want them to visit the link. As we know with Twitter, they suppress posts with links. So it's quite hard to get people to click on stuff these days. How often should we tweet? It's great if you can do it a couple of times a day, but I don't think targets work. I think it's, when we start posting for the sake of it because we feel like we have to, we end up writing kind of empty content that doesn't get any engagement. So really the trick is about finding things to say. There's a couple of particular things that you can do, and one is just to have lists. So we had a bunch of lists when we were active on Twitter. So libraries that we were inspiring us, academic departments, other university libraries, student societies. And the thing about a list is it's just you only see tweets from the people on that list. So you can dip into it, see if there's stuff to respond to, see if there's stuff that you can add to and kind of join in on. So I would recommend making some lists for your remaining time. You can also have saved searches. So when you save a search, then basically when you click into the search bar, they're all just waiting for you. So you can see I've got my recent search that I've done for the university, but then there was a bunch of stuff that I had saved where I could very quickly find references to us and potentially respond to them if need be. So you don't have to talk back, you don't have to interact, you can just broadcast, but people do tend to get more out of platforms when they are interactive. Having said all of that, reach is limited, and the problem is not the posts. There are good posts which are not getting engagement because the platform's so broken. So in this particular example from the library, 3.6% of the followers saw the tweet. It's a good tweet. It's got useful information. It's got an image in. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's the problem is the platform. Here is one from the actual university, massive amounts of followers, 85,000 followers. Surely that's going to be amazing reach, but actually they're reaching only 1.5% because it is, again, it's a good tweet, but they're suppressing links on the platform, and a huge amount of people on the platform are not people, they're bots. And what the platform wants is to promote hate rhetoric rather than interesting stuff from universities. So it's really hard to get that stuff happening. So basically what I'm saying is do the stuff that makes Twitter work well, but don't put huge amounts of time into trying to get huge amounts of results out of it, because you've got more control over success on Blue Sky and Instagram than you have on Twitter. So your efforts reward ratio is much more in where you'd want it to be, because when you try to do things that work really well on Twitter, they don't always work anyway, just because the platform's broken. Whereas when you try to do stuff that works really well on Instagram, there's more chance of it actually working out well. So, by all means, continue to use it, but don't invest huge amounts of your creativity into it at the expense of the other platforms, because there's only so far you can get with it, if that makes sense. So before we move on to Blue Sky, has anybody got any questions on Twitter or comments on Twitter, or anything they want to say or ask or discuss with each other about X before we move on? Yeah, it's so sad. It was so good, and it's such a shame. It's just, let's not think about it too much. It's just bleak. It was a fabulous platform generally, and it was really great for libraries, and particularly good for academic libraries. There was so much to be positive there, and it's such a shame that all of that got corrupted and taken away. But here we are, nevertheless. So do we have to use our own photos and videos? Is there a viral meme image, for example, that could be relevant? Could we post that with a caption? Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's the most flexibility on this platform as to whether or not you do that. So whereas on Instagram, I would never use stock photography. It 100% doesn't work. People know it's stock photography and they don't care. They want captured images. On Twitter, X, and to some extent Facebook as well, I think you can use that stuff if it's helping you make a point, if it's helping illustrate something or be an analogy for something. So I don't think you do have to use your own photos and videos. And if there is a some sort of image that helps you make a point, then by all means do it with your own caption or an adaptation of a meme. That kind of stuff is absolutely fine, I think. As I say, it's still not a guarantee for success because it's really hard to guarantee any kind of success unless you're just posting awful things about people. I mean, it's very hard to make things work on Twitter that isn't sort of essentially based in othering people. But nevertheless, that sort of stuff does work well, and by all means, you don't have to stick to your own photos and videos, I would say. Okay, so quick reminder: Blue Sky, 40 million users, replies, reposts, and likes, text, video, image, open to everyone. And it is the platform on which the most original research is shared. So it has very much taken over from Twitter as the forum for academics to talk about research and share research, which is why only 40 million people is a lot. But compared to the other things we're talking about, I don't know what 40 million is as a percentage of 3 billion, which is what Facebook has got, but it is microscopically small. However, there is a decent amount of people that are relevant to our interest on that platform. So the things that we talked about with X that are very relevant to Blue Sky are mixing up the content. So, a mixture of kind of video and text and images and stuff works well on Blue Sky. Posting that kind of meme type content can work well on Blue Sky as well if it's aimed at the right demographic. Using lists is just as relevant on Blue Sky. You can create Blue Sky lists, and that can give you a way to dip in quickly to content and find stuff to react to. Using hashtags with intention rather than just at random. Posting threads that go into more detail, and as I've said before, Blue Sky is mainly for the academics and researchers, so they can handle detail. They don't need everything to be very, 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 very brief, although brevity still has its advantages, but it doesn't have to be the only criteria. And then making content accessible through alt text is another thing that would apply equally to both. And finally, the idea of it's not just about posting about the library, it's also about posting about things which are of interest to your community. And that might be not library related, but if it's of interest to the academics, they'll value it. They'll be more likely to trust you as an information source and come back to you for more. So those are the things that are, in common. What about some key things which don't apply to X, but are important to Blue Sky? So one of them is there is an analytics tool, which I mentioned last time, called blueskymeter.com. And that will allow you to look at any account and put the account in and find out their most liked or their most replied to or their most reposted posts. So there are a number of departments. There are a number of Trinity academic departments who've set up accounts on Blue Sky and have lots of followers and are posting. So you can put their names in, because you have to log in as them. You just put their name into Blue Sky Meter and it will tell you the stuff that is doing well for them. And that's a really, really helpful thing. And obviously when you become active with your own account, you can use it to get a sense of the stuff that is liked the most. So this is the kind of the most liked posts in order of likes from the stuff that I've posted as the library. And it gives you a sense of what works and what doesn't. And as I said last time, there are some things which are just outliers and I wouldn't necessarily be able to learn from, but there's a lot of stuff where I can learn, oh yeah, this is what our community responds best to. What else? The Deck Blue dashboard. If you're going to post collectively, it can be worth having a dashboard, and Deck Blue is the one that I found that you can use for free, which I think is good, although it might be that it's out because it's a free tool. You can also pay like $2 a month to have a paid for version. The thing about it is you can divide up your columns to make it useful to work collectively. So there's the home thing, and that is just the feed as it appears in Blue Sky. And that is really helpful because, as I said, you don't want to be cut adrift from the conversation. You want to know what people are talking about. And then there is the you column, and that's the absolutely key thing when you've got multiple people posting. So if Laura and Brendan are both active as the library on Blue Sky, Brendan can see that Laura actually has already replied to that, so there's no need for anything to happen there. So that's a really crucial thing to be able to instantly see what has been dealt with by seeing your own posts. There's the notifications, the follows, the likes, the reposts, and the replies. And then there is bookmarks, and bookmarks, which have only just been introduced natively on Blue Sky itself, are really helpful because the like button can just be used to show appreciation. And eventually you end up with an absolute ton of likes and it becomes an unsortably large amount of likes. So if you want stuff that you can refer back to, or perhaps surface outside of your group to see to other managers, or if there's genuine feedback or things that are of significance, you can bookmark them and see them all in one place. And then there is the likes, things that you've liked, and of course there is a chat column as well, which I've not screenshotted here, but for the one-to-one interactions that you have. So I would recommend having a sort of a dashboard for collective posting to a platform if you can. Obligatory alt text. As far as I know, you can't do this on Twitter, but you can on Blue Sky. You can make it so that you have a require alt text before posting button ticked, and then it will just stop you from posting a thing without having alt texted it. And that's really good because when you're in a rush, sometimes you can just forget. But it's really, really important alt text. You all know why. I don't need to tell you why alt text is important. But it can still happen that sometimes stuff gets posted without it. So being able to make sure that doesn't happen is a really good thing for with the institutional hat on. That's absolutely vital. And you can also post alt text for videos, which is something that you can't do on Instagram, you can't do on Facebook, can't do on Twitter. And so being able to describe the video for those who can't watch it is a really, really useful tool. There is another thing that you can do, which is quite nice on Blue Sky, which is that if you put a URL in, it will sort of embed the link with the image, and you can then delete the URL from the post, and the clickable link will remain there at the bottom. So that gives you the characters back to be able to be able to add in as well. Key things. Final one, I think, is starter packs, and we talked about starter packs last time. So starter packs are the ability to bring together people on a shared theme or purpose or content and put them in a pack which other people can just follow in one click. So we have my institution set up a University of York starter pack, and we promote it regularly. And when new academics arrive on the platform, it means that in one click, they immediately can connect with over 100 other York related accounts, departments, individual lecturers, postgraduate researchers, etc. So I think starter packs are really, really useful things, a service we can provide. So I would say a sort of a homework activity would be to set up a starter pack, and you can find relevant accounts in different ways. So you can see when I search for Trinity Dublin, there's quite a lot of academics who are at the institution, and so you can find them that way and you can add them to a starter pack. When I search for TCD, loads of departments have TCD as the start of their name, so all of those come up, and you can add them to a starter pack. So I would really recommend, before you fully launch your Blue Sky account, putting together that starter pack, leading with that, because loads of people will find it useful. And what happens when people follow all the accounts in a starter pack is that they follow you as well. So you quickly build your network by providing that useful service. I think everyone's on board with this, but just to restate, really my recommendation is just focus on the academic and research community. If it's aimed at an undergraduate student, just don't put it on Blue Sky. There's just, it probably won't get any traction. You may as well save your energy for Instagram for that audience and just focus on the academics and researchers. So talked about aspects of Blue Sky before that I didn't include there. We've talked about some new aspects here, and then we've gone over a couple of things in a bit more detail. Is there anything else before we move on to Instagram that people want to ask or say about the possible future Blue Sky directions of the library? Anything that anyone wishes to ask or say? Okay. Is there a good resource document with tips on effective creative alt text? Um, yes, there is. The question is, am I going to remember what it's called in the time that I have to look it up? Um, it was done by an agency. What is it? Let's do some real time hunting here. Um, yeah, I can't find the exact one. Okay, so basically, Alison, there is a particular guide that gave some really good um, perspective, not just on the mechanics of like here's what all text is and here's where you write it, but specifically what aspects of an image should be brought to the attention of the person getting it read to them by a screen reader using alt text. I did put it into the part one. So the information is there. So I will hunt it down. I'll go back into my slides next time we have a break and I'll find it. But either way, yes, there is some good guidance and it tells you basically what to focus on and what is most advantageous to talk about. So I'll dig that out and I'll share it. Anything else from anybody on Blue Sky before we get into Insta? Yeah, don't worry, Alison. I will find it. I've got the slides. I just haven't got them open because that would confuse the heck out of me to be having two slide decks on my computer at once. So I will. We'll probably have a break at midday, and I'll hunt it out there. So don't worry about going back to part one for it. Okay, I don't think that there are any other Blue Sky questions. So we'll get into Instagram next in a bit more detail, and it is worth saying that having a successful Instagram account that works well is probably worth more even than having a successful Blue Sky or X account. I'm not devaluing those, but I'm just saying there is such a huge amount of reach available on Instagram. And in terms of behavioral change, getting awareness up of things that people don't know about, the breadth of what you offer, driving attendance at exhibitions, all of that kind of thing, Instagram can have a genuinely recognizable, tangible impact on the library per se. So it is the thing I would spend the most time on. We've talked about all three platforms today, but going forward, I would invest the creativity primarily and the resource of time primarily in Instagram because there's so much to gain from it. So there was a number of comments in the kind of survey about what you wanted to talk about in the session, more in-depth knowledge about, for example, using Reels, tricks with production of content to help with the algorithm. There's a couple of other things as well about kind of do's and don'ts and stuff. So people really want to get into it with Instagram, and that's absolutely fine. We will do that now. And as I say, I've put stuff in the slides, but what I'm really hoping is that people just come at me with questions and comments and suggestions and things they want to explore in more detail that we can kind of segue off into. So please don't hold back when if there's a thing that you're thinking, I'd quite like to know about this, but maybe it's too niche and no one else cares, just ask it anyway, because I really want people to feel like they know exactly where they are with what is a fairly complicated platform. Instagram is brilliant, the rewards are great, but it's actually the least straightforward. Even TikTok, which eats time, at least that's basically just video, whereas Instagram's a mix, and that does mean it takes some time to understand. So let's get into it. So as I'm sure you remember from last time, there are three main content types, and using them successfully together is the key to an Instagram account working well. So there is the stories, the fact that there is a little colored, what is that, purple, orange, red circle round your profile picture is a sign that there is a live story. So within the last 24 hours, you've posted a story. It's exactly the kind of thing that stories should be used for. It's a time sensitive thing about something that was happening. So yeah, that's great. And you can also pin the stories along a theme, and you don't have to do this. If a story is just something that's completely disposable, that's absolutely fine, just leave it. But if it fits into the theme of manuscripts or exam tips, then it's good to add it to the highlight. And that's just a sort of dot click thing that you do within Instagram itself. You can have videos that are up to 60 seconds. You can actually have longer than that, but you'd have to split it into more than one story. If it's just a still image, it kind of stays on screen for about 7 seconds and then disappears. So that does have a bearing on how much text you would put into a story. If it's going to be basically far too much to read in 7 seconds, I would cascade it across more than one story. If you're interested in previous stories that the library has done to get a sense of how it's used, you can just go into any of these highlights and look back over them. One thing I would say is it's worth having semi-regular check-ins to essentially weed the stories. So I do this maybe, well, I to be honest, I try and do it sort of seasonally, but I don't always get there. So sometimes I might do it every 6 months or a little bit more. I go into the stories and I watch each of the pinned highlights through to make sure there is not something that was actually only relevant up until September, in which case get rid of it from the pinned highlight because it's no longer helpful for people watching them all. So it's good to have a sort of an auditing process at least annually to make sure that they're all still relevant. Then there is the posts, and this is the post icon, often known as the grid. The grid's changed recently. Used to be square pictures that were sort of 3 across, and now there is these 4x5 slightly vertical previews, which are many more across on a given screen. The grid is normally just images. If a video is posted on its own, it'll be a reel. But you can also post a carousel post. Carousel posts are hugely important, and they are, if you see the head in the bottom left corner there, that little square on top of another square icon that's also on the book, the Frankenstein book, is a sign that it's a carousel. There is more than one piece of content posted, and that can be images or it can be a mixture of images and video. If you want to post several videos, you can't do it as a reel, you have to do it as a carousel. You can do pictures and videos together, or you can do just pictures. But we'll talk about carousels a bit more because they've become a really big deal. And then there is the reels, the portrait videos. They stay on your grid. They're not like stories which disappear. They will be available in 2 ways, both on your grid and on your Reels page or tab as well. So people often will go straight to a Reels tab and just look at the Reels and see what there is. So you can see the current most recent Reels on the account here with their viewing figures. So generally speaking, Reels are liked by the platform. In addition to this, just to mention in passing, there is also direct messages, and it is a nightmare when you're collectively running accounts. They're so easy to miss. Once someone's looked at it, the little red icon with the 1 goes away. So if the person who checks the direct message doesn't respond to it, it probably gets lost forever. And there is also a kind of request thing where people who haven't already been accepted for direct messages have to get in there as well. And then you can accept the message. And so that's another place you have to look. So in my experience, and it might just be that I'm useless at this, but in my experience, when collectively running an Instagram account, it is direct messages that are most often the problem. So I would be really rigorous as the first and last thing you personally each do when you log into the account to do stuff on it is check that there are messages that are, whether there's a pending message essentially. Is there a way to archive stories that have expired? I mean, the institutional backend as opposed to the public archive. Some are successful, disappear after 24 hours. They might be useful as a reference for future. Yeah, absolutely there is, Alison. In fact, it's called the archive. I've never actually tried to access it on a desktop, so I don't know 100% for sure that you can. But it might well be that you can. But certainly on the mobile version of the app, I'll just look at where it is. So in the I've put my phone on airplane mode, so I can't actually get into anything. Okay, this is really probably not going to work very well, but okay, you can. Fab. Oh, this is brilliant. Everyone's helping me out, so I don't have to candidly do a demo on my phone holding it up to the thing. Right. So you can go into the archives. You go into your settings basically, and there is a okay. I am going to hold my phone up to the thing. I don't know if you can see this in the screen that you're looking at, but there is an archive button, and the archive has every single story you've ever done in there, whether or not it's pinned. So you can refer back to any story, and you can, if you wish to, sort of dredge it up to share it as a post or send it on to someone, or you can delete it if for some reason you actually want it to be deleted. But they're all there. So as you say, Alison, if you do want to refer back to it as an inspiration for future content, then yes, the answer is yes, you can do that. And when you go into your archive, it will show you posts that you've posted on this day, ready as a sort of ready to go again if you want to do a kind of like, so I don't know if you can, again, I'm just holding my phone up to the screen, it's probably a bit rubbish, but you can see on this day 2 years ago, I don't know if you can see that or not, this is what you posted, and I can share it and it will become a story that's like, hey, 2 years ago today we posted this. So sometimes referring back to things seasonally or annually can be a nice thing to do as well. Okay, so in summary on the different content type, before we get into them in a bit more detail, I've said this last time, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's important to restate it. The stories are good for short videos, just text content, doesn't need to be polished, news, updates, things that might be a tweet, things that don't photograph well, things that are time sensitive, things that are interactive. Stories are brilliant for all of those things. The grid pics, they can be landscape or square images, but actually it tends to work better now if you do 4x5 ones, but you do have the option of doing whatever you want for that. They will appear correctly formatted. They're great for behind the scenes, Throwback Thursday stuff, content. Brilliant photography is not required for these photographs. It's about what the image is of that is important. And then you've got the reels, which are the vertical videos, good for showcasing spaces, good for interviews with students, tips and tricks, hacks. And there is a real value just to showing people what the library is like so that they will come in feeling more confident about using the space. The stories are basically only ever seen by your followers. It's almost, I mean, technically you can, like I can, if I don't follow you, I can find your stories by going to your account, and if you've got one live, I can look at it. But that doesn't really ever happen. It's stories are seen by the people that follow you realistically. And then your grid pics are mainly seen by your followers. If you do a carousel, which we'll come back to in a second, there's a higher chance of it being pushed to non-followers as well. And then you've got your reels, which are often shown to accounts that don't follow you as well as ones that do. It's not like TikTok, where it's almost exclusively accounts that don't follow you that see your stuff. You still have a kind of core audience of your followers, but reels are a good way to find people who would be interested in your content but don't already follow you on Instagram, because they will be pushed into people's feeds. And so they are good for building the audience. And in fact, you can find that works against you. So for example, at my library, we have various digital labs. We have a kind of creativity lab, and it's just for York students and staff. And my colleagues who run the Instagram account for that have found that if they put in too many good hashtags and they put something in a reel, they end up getting loads of questions from people who can't use it because they're not University of York students. So they actually deliberately stick to normal grid posts that tend to get shared just to their own followers, so that they're not promising stuff to people that they can't deliver. As I said before, it's a sort of a your ideas here platform where the best content often comes from just being in the space or seeing something happening, capturing it, and then later developing it into something, rather than necessarily sort of sitting down and thinking, what should I do here? And again, just to repeat one slide from the previous session, because I think it's so important. A good Instagram strategy, it knows what it wants to achieve because it knows what the library wants to achieve. It knows which of the aims of the library more generally is most pertinent to Instagram. It works with the other library marketing that is happening rather than just completely on its own. And it combines those grid post stories and reels in an intentional way. So we will get into more of the kind of hardcore mechanics of these different platforms, or rather content types within the platform, after a break. So the guide to writing alt text is in the chat now, Alison. So very useful guide with loads of relevant info. Excuse me. So I thought it'd be useful to go into this disparity a bit more about how content reaches people on this platform, so that we can really get into making informed choice about what do we choose to do with it. So I mentioned that there's this data, a couple of years out of date, but it's still really helpful to have this kind of benchmark about how many people you could expect to reach with each content type based on the number of followers that you've got. So both your library and mine are in the 2K to 10K follower category. And this is what the average is. Now, obviously, that's a huge range there, 8,000 followers difference. So this is the average that sits presumably somewhere in the middle of all that. And I would say that the reel seems roughly correct, but the story is just way too low. I don't think that's an accurate representation, and posts isn't that high. I think I would expect a post to get more views than that, particularly if we used a carousel. So I wanted to show some examples of, obviously I can't get into your analytics, but I can show you examples from my own posting. So this is this is like day before yesterday. This is a very functional update. There is nothing particularly exciting about it. It didn't get a huge amount of, some people do press the like button now on stories sometimes, which kind of helps it, I think. But generally speaking, it's not particularly visual, it's not particularly exciting. It's aimed at a particular group of people. Not everybody is interested in ADHD drop-in. So it's relatively niche, but that, even as something that was, really not going to go that far, I got 585 views. So that's way more than the 244 suggested thing. If we look at the most popular stories over the last 12 months, hello, good to have you back. Hope you managed to sort out the thing that you had to go and sort out. If we look at the most popular stories that I've posted to the library over the last 12 months, you can see that the numbers are for the more popular ones are often above 1,000. So the stories are a good way of reaching people. And of course, the key thing about them is that you can put other stuff in them. You can put links into them. So if we sort by the most links clicked over the last 12 months, you can see that, to be honest, so the bottom right hand one, which was a story about how we were now on Blue Sky, you can find us there. To get 10 clicks on that, I think is quite good, because there's not that much of an overlap between the Blue Sky and Instagram audiences, and 10 people taking such a direct action, altering their behavior as a result of the library marketing is really good. For the internship thing that's happening in the top left hand corner, 138 clicks is amazing. I'm really pleased that many people were essentially, again, change their behavior as a result of the post. So we want people to do stuff. Now, you can post a picture, you can post a video, but you don't have to. You can just go to the create option. If you're using Instagram on a mobile device, you get a color background. You can choose from a couple of colors, and then you can just write stuff. You can just write your text in there. And that's what the one that I showed you, the functional kind of update about the drop-in, is based on. If you tap that little sticker button, which is the little, the face in the middle at the top of the screen there, you get all of these options, which are a little bit overwhelming because there's so many of them, and I don't find all of them relevant to us in our sector. But I did want to flag up some of the key ones that you can use if you are in a position to be able to post from a mobile device. The search box is useful because you can just put in stuff that you want to happen. So like if you're just posting a good morning type post, you can find an animated good morning. If you want an arrow to point at something and say click here for more information, you can get an arrow that is highlighting stuff and all that kind of thing. So the search box is useful, as well as just what's available by default. Questions is the thing that apart from links, I think questions is the most useful thing. That's where you can ask the audience something and then they type in their responses direct to your story, and that response goes to you. And as I told you last time, Instagram audiences seem to much prefer interacting with libraries one-to-one rather than in the comments. So you'll get a lot back if you use the questions well. I think it's a really good thing to do. An example of that is this, where I've asked the audience to describe the library in 3 words. And as well as just asking the question, I'm then reflecting back the answers at people to encourage more people to answer, and so that people feel seen and heard. There is cutouts, which is a way of cutting out part of a photo to use in a story. So if you've got a picture of a building and you want to divorce it from its background and just have it as a sort of sticker at the building and then write some text next to it, that's quite a useful, quick to use tool that avoids you having to go into a third-party app. Obviously the link thing, which is absolutely invaluable because it allows you to drive things, behavior towards a particular web page or ticket link or whatever it is you're doing. Polls, as long as you're not just kind of crowbarring in a poll for the sake of it, the polls can be a useful way of eliciting responses and genuinely getting feedback on stuff. You can actually float ideas like, should we, the library, do this or that? And then that percentage, you can't choose it as the only thing that represents the student voice, but you can get a sense of what people want from it. And then there's the countdown option, which where you can set a date for, like, the exhibition launch, for example, 48-hour countdown, and then another one at 24 hours, and then that will, whenever anyone clicks on it in that 24-hour period, will have an up-to-date number of hours and minutes and potentially seconds until the exhibition is live. So all of that kind of stuff is useful. You can also post stories from desktop. You don't have to use a mobile device, but you do get fewer options. But you can do it in the Meta Business Suite. So basically, step one is to go to create story and then add your photo or potentially a video. Step two is to go to edit, and then you get to add stuff, but the number of things you can add is less. And then you can add text. You can add a link, and as you can see, you can give the actual URL, but you can write on it what you want it to say. So people will then tap that to go to the thing. So the final step is to be able to move that around so you can have the link in a place that is appropriate, so it's not obscuring the key part of the image or whatever it is. So there are definitely things that you can do with stories beyond just posting static things. If you are using desktop, there's way more things you can do with stories if you're able and comfortable using a mobile device. So stories are key. And as I say, please just ask stuff at any point if anything you would like to know more about a particular aspect of posting to Instagram, or want to talk about something in a bit more detail, or float an idea or whatever. Then you get posts, and as I say, I would expect a slightly higher yield in terms of reach. And what I would quite like to do is just I know that you've got the logins. Would you be able to just sort of I guess the simplest thing would be if you could agree between you in the room, just one person to log in now, rather than several people logging in at once. And just these are both two posts in a row that are happening in the last sort of 5 or 6 posts on your account. And I'm just interested to know what the number of total views or impressions is on each of these. So I'm hoping that this is possible to do, and it's not going to cause it's not going to be one of those things where I instantly regret setting us off on a very complicated path. But basically, if someone is able to log in to the account, then you'll find these posts really easily by just going to your profile, the Trinity College Dublin Library profile, and then above where the likes count is, there'll be a view insights that you can click on, which is not visible in this screenshot because obviously I don't get that when I'm looking at your content because I'm not logged into your account. And I just wanted to see what difference the likes make to the reach, basically. So there's one post here with 5 likes and there's one post here with 139 likes. And as we talked about in the first session, to get the reach on Instagram, you sort of have to do things that make people respond. So the like is not the only thing. They can also send it on, they can favorite it, they can comment on it. All of these actions are important, but the one that happens the most is the likes. So manuscripts go down really, really well. And so that's got 139 likes. Okay, fab. We've got some insight here. So let's have a look. So for the manuscript one, we've got, I'm assuming that this is the manuscript one. Yeah, it must be. Is that right? Yeah, 140 likes. 5 saves. The shares is always naught when you go into analytics, but it's not necessarily true. So it might be that it has been shared more than once. It's not a very reliable thing. We've reached 3,000 people, of which about 3/4 were followers and 1/4 were non-followers. Okay, that's brilliant. We've also had 10 people visit the profile as a result of it, and 5 of them have become followers. So that's absolutely fantastic, a win there. So with the next one, we've got 2,300 views, and interestingly, the followers versus non-followers split is even. I'm quite surprised at that, actually. I'm surprised that that many non-followers have seen the post. So yeah, that is interesting. And so reaching 1,131 accounts overall, as opposed to 1,000. Let's have a look at this. I'm clicking through all kinds of stuff now. Okay, so we've got 2,300 views, whereas for the first one we've got 3,100 views. Although the total interactions are 155 on the first one versus 8 on the second one. So we are getting more views from the content that has got the likes, because the likes are help pushing the views. So for me, looking at this particular graphic thing, this is exactly the kind of thing that works perfectly on stories, because you can put the link in there as well, and it doesn't matter that it's got words and stuff, but the words are reducing the number of views because you're not getting as much push from Instagram essentially as a result of the engagement. So I hope that makes sense. So it is worth thinking about, like, well, what do we do that is likely to result in a higher level of engagement and therefore a higher level of reach? And I'm really surprised that there's a 50-50 split between followers and non-followers, because what normally happens is the more views something gets, the more likely it is to be shared with non-followers. So I don't know, maybe a bunch of people have sent this one on to people or whatever. So thank you for looking that up. That's really, really helpful. So a carousel post has got multiple images in it, or multiple videos. So here's a recent carousel post from the library. So you can see with that little dot along the bottom and the arrow there, I can cycle through these and see the other pictures in the thing. And they're good because sometimes they'll show up in people's feed more than once. So I might see this browsing through, see the picture of the book in the first frame there. And then if I were to sort of complete my timeline, see everything, I might then get another bite at the cherry, and it will have automatically moved it on to another one of the slides. So carousels are good anyway, but a carousel with music added in Instagram is even better, because then it pushes it into the Reels algorithm and you get way more views and way more reach. So I would recommend adding music to your carousels, and there's a load of music built in. So this isn't something where you have to source music from somewhere else. It's built into the system. And it will just play 30 seconds of the track of your choosing, and you can choose which 30 seconds that is, and you just type stuff in and it will bring stuff back. So if there's a song, like to take a super on the nose example, if Monster Mash is in there and you want to put Monster Mash on because it's Frankenstein related, then you can do that. But also you can just type in words like calm or aesthetic, and it will give you something laid back to kind of be in the background of the post. The important thing is, algorithmically, it is a trick which works. So these are the most viewed things that I've posted on Instagram as the library over the last 12 months. 3 of them were just regular posts, but the other 9 are all either reels or carousels with music, because they are the things that are getting the reach. So I would recommend that kind of approach. And one of the nice things you can do with carousel is just split one image up into chunks. So you can take a picture and you can post the left-hand part of it as the first image in the carousel. And then you can post the next bit, and then you can post the last bit. You can also do this with old manuscripts as well. You can have up to 20 pictures that you essentially split across several posts, and that people love that when you do that. There are apps which do this for you, or you can manually do it in PowerPoint. It's a bit of a faff, but it's worth it because it goes down really, really well. So splitting a panoramic photo up is one thing you can do. Just having multiple photos is another thing you can do, or you can do a sort of mixture of the two. So this is the post that's been the most popular post that I've done recently. And let me just drag it onto the screen here. So it's about the library being a certain amount of years old. Now I'm going to move the thing on. You can see, so the picture is spread across 2 frames here. So I've got the initial thing, and when you're swiping it with your thumb, you can hold it at any place, and the joins are sort of seamless. And I put some little notes on explaining what things are, and the final picture of the library when it was new in the 60s. Obviously, it's not just that it's a carousel that it's done so well. It's a combination, a collaborative post, as Karen was mentioning, with the alumni office, because it's about old stuff. Although even before they accepted the invite, it had more than 400 likes. It had gone down really, really well. And it's got music in the background, and it's in the Reels algorithm. And if we go into the insights here, you can see that the percentage is kind of heavily towards non-followers because it's got so popular that it's kind of outstripped just past our followers. And we've reached 8,800 people, but so several of them have viewed it multiple times or flicked through and looked at different views. We've had a bunch of saves, a bunch of comments. The shares are not accurate there, as I mentioned. There's much more shares than that. For whatever reason, they just never display in this bit. And then it shows us profile visits and follows as well. So that basically works well for us. Some notes that I put interesting with an asterisk because maybe only I'll find this interesting, but some things I noticed when I was looking through this to try and find patterns and look at what was working. The first one is the most viewed, but the second one actually got more people, but they just they viewed fewer times, as it were. So even though there's a 4,000 discrepancy in the views, we reached more accounts with a panoramic comparison picture between the 70s and the 10s. So sometimes just total views isn't actually indicative of the total reach. Interestingly, the video of York floods, it did gain us 5 followers, but it lost us 7. I've never seen a video result in more people leaving our account. So it was, off topic. It's nothing to do with the library, and I do normally encourage that kind of thing. And it's got a huge amount of views, but some people were just like, do you know what? I'm not here for that. I don't want that from the library, so I'm off. The virtual tour wasn't particularly successful as a video. I didn't think it would be because it's that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily go down that well on Instagram. But it only got 59 likes, but because it was shared from the main uni account in their stories, it's had a huge amount of views, and it also led to loads of new follows. And so that is a great thing to do, is to get the uni to share stuff. And then the most popular thing here, we can see that there is 8,000 views from followers, 12,000 from non-followers. So there's a big emphasis on non-followers in that one. Reach is vital, but what I'm really interested in is engagement. So that on the left is the posts in the order of their popularity of reach. On the right is how many people did something. Press the like button, press the share button, left a comment, and that's what I'm really interested in, is making stuff that elicits a response. And just on the topic of Reels, these are our most recent Reels. You can see the numbers of views there. So that one there is just not library related. The Library Cafe being reopened is 7 seconds long. Like, it's a really, really short video. And it actually, this is a rare instance where I posted something on both TikTok and Instagram because it had gone so well on TikTok. I thought, I'll try it on Instagram too. It probably won't be as good. And it wasn't. So it had like 13,000 views on TikTok, but on Insta, it was only 2,900. But the point being, you don't have to agonize over a long reel. You can just make something short and sharp that gets the point across. This is a incredibly detailed Severance pastiche that I loved and put my heart and soul into. And this is just some library shots with music in the background, and that got way more views. So sometimes, you can put a lot of effort into something that is very specific and it doesn't necessarily get anywhere. This is an example of an unsuccessful experiment. So one of the first things we talked about today is how you've got to be prepared to try stuff that doesn't work. Because I know that the traditional virtual tour thing doesn't work that well on Instagram, we got this 3D printed model of the library. I thought I'll just talk through it with the model in front of me, pointing at different bits, and see if that works. But it didn't really go down that well. So it didn't really get that much views compared to some of the other stuff that we've done. So as I said in the first one, combining this content is the key thing. Try to get maybe like a regular grid post or a carousel, a reel a week, and then a story per day at least, to try and get the interest up and so on. So does anybody have any questions about the sort of technical aspects of Instagram. Is there anything that you were hoping we'd cover that we haven't got to in terms of how things work, differences between different types of content? I've tried to get in a bit more granular detail about things and show you sort of what works and what doesn't, but I really want to respond to what people want to talk about. So is there anything Insta related that anybody would like to discuss before we move on? Okay, I don't think there is anything. But if you do think of anything, do let me know before the end. And just to reiterate some of the stuff that we talked about last time in terms of what you could add as ambassadors, exterior, interior images of the building, a bit more use of the hashtags, some more reels, reposting other people's pictures, some collaborative posts either with the uni or the Students' Union, some stuff that's just Dublin related, and of course your perspective, your enthusiasm, and your expertise are the key things. Okay, so let us finish off. As I say, I'm going to talk really briefly about Adobe Express, but just to briefly touch on like tone and building community. What I'm keen is for people to think about how they would like the library to be perceived and who you want to build community with. So think about like how do you want people to describe the library? What do you want people to say about the library when you're not there? Because effectively, the library brand that was, Karen mentioned this at the start, it's sort of what people say about you when you're not in the room. So what are people saying about the library, and is that what you want them to say? You can't control that, but you can influence it. You can move people towards saying stuff that you want them to say. So you can't control the brand, but you can develop your materials, develop your social media strategy to try and influence it. So what do you want to be known for? Is it to be approachable, to be fun, to be authoritative, to be quick, to be comprehensive? Some of these are almost opposites. So it would be impossible to be known for all of them. So it might be worth internally thinking, well, what do we want to work on this year or this academic year? And then maybe pick 2 or 3 things and then push towards what you want those to be. So you can get a good idea of the brand just by asking people to describe the library in 3 words. We did that in my institution a few years ago. There was completely free text answers. And the things that people most wrote were that we were helpful, useful, accessible, organized, and friendly. Now, I was delighted that people described us like this, that these are all good things to be described as. But if you contrast the brand with the vision that we had at the time, which was about stimulating the human drive for curiosity, delivering cultural experiences, they're a little bit sort of passive. I don't want to not be known for these things, but I also want to push slightly the more exciting stuff. So we adjusted our communication. As a result of knowing what we wanted the brand to be and what it was, we were able to change the way that we did social media to push it towards the area that we wanted. So it was about not blending in. It was about taking a bit more risk and trying to make things happen. And it worked. There was loads of really exceptional unsolicited feedback when we started to take more risk, put more personality into it, put more of us, like sort of passion into it. So it is helpful to have that kind of internal discussion about how you would like to be perceived and how can we use the social media to make that happen. So branding is the process of building a coherent and distinct pattern of associations in the mind of the audience. This is what Mark DeMassimo says. So what can we do to build a distinct pattern of patterns and associations in the mind of the audience that we want to have associated with the library at Trinity College Dublin? Now, when you're working as part of a team to be the voice of the library, when Mark and Christopher and Claire are all being the library at different times, it's very easy for us to say, well, what do we want to be? We want to be nice. We want to be inclusive. We want to be helpful. We can all get on board with the stuff that we want to be. What I think is hugely helpful when working as a team is working out what you don't want to be, or at least putting limits on what you do want to be so that everybody knows where they are. So for example, you could choose approachable. You could say, right, one of our key things is we want to be approachable, but that might mean completely different things to Laura than it does to Alison. So we need to know where we are on this. We need to know what the limits and the boundaries are. So a really helpful exercise, I think, is it's uninspiredly named "We're this but not that." So you might say we're simple to understand, we're nuanced, we're irreverent, we're sassy, we're clever, authoritative, we're friendly, we're attentive. I'm not saying you would want to be all these things. I'm just giving them as examples. So simple to understand, great, that's good. We want to be simple to understand. But what if I interpret that completely differently to you? What if I take it to a level that is inappropriately simple for an academic institution? So we need the but not that to help us sit where we are. So we're simple to understand, but we're not dumbing down. That's helpful. We're nuanced, but we're not complicated. That's helpful. We know where we are. We're irreverent, but we're not disrespectful. We're sassy, but we're not mean. So that's helping me find the line there. Again, imagine this other person, this fictional new addition to the ambassadors group who comes in January 2026. How do they know where the line is? Right. So we're sassy, but we're not mean. We never make anyone feel bad. We're clever, but we're not showing off. We're friendly, but we're not so friendly we lack credibility. Or we're attentive, but we're not like following everyone to this extent where they feel like it's intrusive. So what I would like to do is a brief exercise. I would like you to come up with some "we're this, not that." And there's not particular ones I'm hoping you're going to say or anything like that. I'm genuinely open to whatever people are interested in here. I would like you to grab your paper or open your document and just come up with a few phrases that are then qualified. So it can't be like we're going to be nice, but we're not going to be rude, because that's just the same thing said twice. It needs to be we're going to be this, but the limit is here. So I hope that makes sense to people. I think this is a really, really helpful thing to do, especially if you're able to share what you came up with afterwards, kind of collectively. So I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to shut up for a minute and let you do this. Try to write out some "with this but not that's," and see what you come up with. And if it doesn't make sense, do let me know in the chat and I'll try and explain. This is for you. You know, it's internal. It's not something that you'd ever have to make into kind of like a slogan. It's just for you to find your own collective sense of how you want to express yourselves on social media. Informative but not overwhelming is again, that's brilliant. All of these are examples of things where I could come into the organization and feel like I knew what I was doing, even if I was new. You know, that's what you want. You want to be able to so yeah, these are all great examples. So I would say if you're able to maybe collect together what you've all individually come up with as this, not that's today, and maybe sort of codify it a little bit, you know, come up with some absolutely core tenets of what you want to do that speak for the library. I think that'd be a really worthwhile doing. But yeah, those are great examples. Thank you for sharing them, because they're kind of spot on. Okay. So I mentioned that I was going to talk very, very briefly about Adobe Express. So as was mentioned at the very beginning of this, there is Adobe Express training coming up. So we're not going to go into any detail about this today, but it's a tool that can be used. It's very popular among librarians for making like explainer videos, but also it can do social media posts of various kinds. The thing I want to say about it is it offers you templates, and some of these templates are really useful, and some of them are tempting, but not useful. So you have to pick the things that are going to work. So I'd say YouTube thumbnails, yeah, it's great at that. Infographics, very good if you're using them in stories, for example. Yeah, it can be good for that. Instagram story templates work quite well. There's some nice ones there. Instagram square posts is just an absolute. This is a classic example of a tool offering you something that you don't need. So, I mean, for a start, things have changed now and they're not square anymore in the same way. But even so, we know that pictures of words don't get likes on, and then they don't get as viewed as much. So what we want is for people to choose the parts of Adobe Express that help them and not just use everything it can do because it's there. So, you know, stuff on Instagram works well when it is just organically captured images or creative videos rather than this sort of thing. So make sure you pick the bits that are the most helpful. Anyway, the training is on the way. So that's all I wanted to say on that. It will tell you how to use the tool, but you've also got to use your judgment as to when and when not to use the tool. Okay, so we're going to finish off today with just mentioning the idea of a social media campaign. So as I mentioned before, I think a lot of library marketing that doesn't work as well as people want it to happens because of a lack of focus. We're talking about too many things at once. It's all a bit diffuse. It's all a bit, it just becomes part of the noise, and we can't afford it for it to be too diffuse because we're trying to change behavior. We're trying to get people to do something that they weren't going to do anyway. So a fragmented approach is very, very hard to make it work. We need to bring people together so that they see something, then they see something again, and then they get on board with it. So if marketing is just telling the right people at the right time in the right way about what we have that they need, campaign marketing is when you get the same message or messages tailored across different platforms for a concentrated period of time. And that period of time might be a week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks. It's not that you wouldn't talk about anything else during that time, but you've got a key thing that is the central focus of what you're doing. A campaign is what provides the hook. It's the thing that makes people really take note of what you've said in a way that influences their behavior rather than just makes them feel interested in it. And that's what we're trying to do. So I just wanted to end by sort of saying, what does a social media campaign plan look like? And you can do whatever you want, whatever helps. And again, there's 1,000,001 templates out there on this, which are not necessarily that helpful because they're so aimed at conversion and business stuff that is not necessarily in our wheelhouse. But I would say that what is helpful is to have a sort of an overview, which is the campaign name that tells you the thing that you're doing. That's just for you, really. Or it could be a thing that actually is external as well, but it's what is this about? And then you've got the primary objective, right? What is the one main thing that you're trying to do? It might be just increasing the use of a particular resource. It might be raising awareness of a particular service or collection. It might be trying to get people to come to a certain thing. If this is measurable, that's brilliant. The primary objective could be, we're going to increase the use of this by 20% over the previous period or whatever it might be. So having a primary objective is good. And of course, a target audience. Who is this? Is this for students? Is it for postgrads? Is it for undergrads? Is it for all of them? Is it for the public? Is it for the staff? And then, of course, just the dates. It's going to last for 3 weeks and it's going to start in December. What is the core message? What is the thing that you really, really want people to take away from this? And can you do more than one post that is expressed differently but comes back to this core message? And what is the call to action? If they like what they've seen, do they know what to do next? You don't want something that's vague. You want to hold their hand and lead them to signing up for this, visiting that, trying that out, downloading this, whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do. And then finally, there is the channels. Is it Insta? Is it X? Is it Blue Sky? Is it all three? Are there other non-social media channels you can add in there as well, which are going to help with this? Then there is the sort of admin, basically who's in charge of this, who is doing the messaging, who's designing the images, what happens when, and ideally if you can measure it, then that's the perfect thing. So what happens? So there's the outputs, there's what you did, and there's this many posts on this platform, and this is how many people they reached. But then there's the outcomes, ideally, which is basically what happened and changed as a result of your social media. Did the resource go up in use? Did more people attend the thing than they did last year? So having a benchmark of what happened before, then doing the social media marketing and seeing what happens to the result is a really, really good way to get a sense of whether or not your social media is working. It's complicated because you might have other marketing aspects happening at the same time, but it's still really good to try and measure that stuff. So my final activity for you, which is a homework activity, not something I want you to do now, is to basically draft a campaign on an area that interests you. It might be the exhibition, it might be the legal deposit library, it might be the special collections, it might be something to do with the teaching resources, whatever it is. Come up using this format or adapting this format if it doesn't quite work for you. What is the objective, the audience? When's it happening? What are the core messages? What are the call to actions? What are the channels? And then ideally, going forward, you would sort of discuss these kind of campaigns with each other, make sure you're not running two at the same time. As I say, if a campaign's happening, it doesn't mean you don't get to talk about anything else. It's just that there is a particular concentrated effort to talk about one theme for a specific period of time. So I would recommend trying to take a campaign approach. So lots covered there. I said I didn't know how long it's going to take. It has taken the time. Is there any final questions or comments or suggestions from anybody before we finish? Anything anyone wants to add, perspectives they want to share, things they want to drill into or revisit, plans, is there anything anyone wants to mention in the chat before we finish today? I would just reiterate something that I said in the first one, which is that ultimately we've got to have kind of sky high ambition with this stuff. It's not that we have to be super corporate and about it, but remember, we're not just making existing library users feel good about using the library here. We're trying to get people to do stuff that is new. We're trying to get them to understand the breadth of the collections. We're trying to get them through the door. We're trying to get them onto the resources. So we have to think like, are we pitching this in a way that is going to result in something happening that's a tangible benefit for the library? So what can you bring that is your kind of passion, your interest to make that happen is the kind of key thing. So we've got to be right up there. Okay, that's a very, very nice callback, Alison. Very kind of you to say. Okay, so if there is questions happening, don't worry, I'm not going to instantly turn off my computer. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you again. I hope that was okay. It's interesting to do a part two that was kind of completely new for this, but I hope it was useful. And best of luck with your ambassadorship. And it's so valuable what you're doing. Like something I'm doing for my own senior management is comparing the amount of reach I'm able to get through social media versus the other channels that we have available to us, because I'm not sure that people really appreciate just how much it is the most effective tool that we have for getting messages out there. So you're contributing to something that's really valuable to the library. So I hope it goes well. And thank you for having me again. And if you've ever got any questions, do get in touch with me. I'm always talking about marketing on Blue Sky and on my website, and there's contact details on there as well. But I will leave it there. Thanks for coming along and enjoy the rest of your days.